Hi gang, today I'm going to talk to you about using fraction benchmark numbers to assess reasonableness of addition and subtraction equations and exploring part-to-whole relationships. Let's begin. So I know that you already know how to add 1/2 and 3/4. But before we do that, we're going to ask ourselves, is our number going to be greater than 1 or less than 1? So I have 1/2 plus 3/4. So how we're going to do this is we're going to look at 1/2. We're going to try to see if it's greater than 1/2. So obviously 1/2 is greater than 1/2. So we already know this is greater than 1/2. Okay? Now let's look at 3/4. Is 3/4 greater than 1/2? How do we find that out? Well, we look at the denominator of 4. We split it in half, which is 2. So 2/4 is half. So 3/4 is greater than that. So this is greater than 1/2. So now I know my answer is going to be greater than 1 because if it's a number greater than 1/2 plus a number greater than 1/2, it's going to be greater than 1/2. Okay, the answer is going to be greater than 1/2. So now let's add and see if we're right. We've got 1/2 and 3/4. I know that 4 can be my denominator. Okay, so 1/2 times 2 over 2 gives me 2/4. And 2/4 plus 3/4 is 5/4. Look at that. I know it's already greater than 1. Because 5/4, I can pull 1/2 out of that, which is 4/4. And 5/4 minus 4/4 means I have 1/4 left. So my answer is 1 1/4. And I knew that it was going to be greater than 1. So does that make my answer reasonable? Absolutely. Let's try another problem. Now let's look at this problem. I know we have a whole number in the 1, but let's look at the fractional parts and see if when we subtract, it will make it less than 1. So we have 1 and 2/5. Well, let's look at the 5. Half of 5 is 2 1/2. So 2 1/2 over 5 would be 1/2. What I just said is 2 1/2 over 5. That's equal to 1/2. So this is a little less than 1/2. Okay? And 2/3, half of 3 is 1 1/2. So 1 1/2 over 3 is equal to 1/2. So 2/3 is a little more than 1/2. So this is a little greater than 1/2. Okay? So we've got 1 and a number a little less than 1/2. Subtracting from that, we're going to take one that's greater than 1/2. So do you think we're going to have to borrow from that 1/2? If this is 1 and 2/5, which is less than 1/2, we're going to subtract something greater than 1/2. Absolutely. We have to borrow from the 1/2. So is the number going to be greater than 1 or less than 1? It's going to be less because we have to take away from that whole. Now let's solve and see. So we take away from that whole, and that gives us 5/5. And 5/5 plus 2/5 equals 7/5. So now we have 7/5 minus 2/3. Now we can change to common denominators. And we've got 7/5 times 3 over 3, which is 21/15. And we've got 2/3 times 5 over 5, which equals 10/15. And I know I'm doing this pretty quick because this should be pretty quick for you to do 2 times 5 is 10 and 3 times 5 is 15. If I'm going too fast, make sure you pause your video. So now let's subtract 21/15 minus 10/15 is 11/15. And again, we got a number that's less than 1/2, which is exactly what we thought was going to happen because, remember, we had to borrow from the 1. So we get 11/15, which is less than 1/2. Let's try again. All right, so we have 4/10 plus 1/3. Well, let's see if it's going to be greater than or less than 1. We have 4/10, so we have the 10. What's half of 10? That's right, 5. So 5/10 is equal to 1/2. So I know 4/10 is less than 1/2. Now we have 1/3. What's half of 3? Half of 3 is 1 1/2. So I know that 1 is less than 1 1/2, so I have another problem that's less than 1/2. So if I have a number that's less than 1/2 plus a number that's less than 1/2, my answer is going to be less than 1 whole, because if it was 1/2 plus 1/2, it would equal 1. So something less than 1/2 plus something less than 1/2 would equal less than 1. Let's try it and make sure we're correct. So I have 4/10 plus 1/3. We can go to 30 as our common denominator, times 3 over 3. 10 times 3 is 30. 4 times 3 is 12. 3 times 10 is 30, so we're multiplying by 10 over 10. 1 times 10 is 10. 12 thirtieths plus 10 thirtieths equals 22 thirtieths, which again is less than 1, just like we thought. Is everybody seeing how you can look at a fraction and use benchmark fractions to determine if your answer is going to be greater than or less than 1? I hope you're realizing that. Let's try again. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to do 4/10 plus 2/9, but I'd like you, before you solve this problem, to think, is 4/10 greater than or less than 1/2? Is 2/9 greater than or less than 1/2? And when I add those two numbers together, is it going to be greater than or less than 1 whole? Then I'd like you to solve the problem and see if your benchmark fractions helped you to determine if it was going to be greater than or less than 1. Bring this problem into your teacher tomorrow and see how you did. Let's continue and explore some part-to-whole relationships. Now let's explore some part-to-whole relationships. These questions are also found on your problem set pages, which your teacher may decide for you to try. But let's try a couple of these together. So number 1 says, draw the following ribbons. When finished, compare your work with your partners. We are obviously not going to do that. A says 1 ribbon. The piece shown below is only 1/3 of the whole. It means this here is 1/3, okay, of the whole. Complete the drawing to show the whole ribbon. Well, if this is 1/3 and we want to show the whole ribbon, that would be 2/3 and that would be 3/3. So I have just shown the whole ribbon. Part B says 1 ribbon, which is shown below. The piece shown below is 4/5 of the whole. So this here is 4/5. Okay. Now, this is 4/5. We can split this into 4 sections. 1, 2, 3, 4. All we have to do is draw one more little section to show the whole. So because that's 4/5, we have to draw the 5/5, the last little section. C is 2 ribbons, A and B. A says 1/3 of A is equal to all of B. Okay, so if this is B, that's all of B. A is equal to, or 1/3 of A is equal to all of B. So this is 1/3 of A. So A must be 3/3 and B is 1/3. So A is 1 unit, B is 1 unit and A is 3 units, because 1/3 of A is equal to B. So basically that means that 1/3 of A has to be equal to B. So those have to be equal. And D says 3 ribbons, C, D, and E. So I'm going to write C, D, and E. C is half the length of D. So it looks like D is the one that we know. So I'm just going to draw a unit for D. C is half of D. So I'm going to split D into 2 units. And C is half of that. So C is one of those units. E is twice as long as D. So E, that's D. And E is twice as long. So that is E. So what we've done is we've explored part-to-whole relationships. Your teacher may choose to continue on with this strategy or would just like this one exposure. Thanks for watching.